Our second to last speaker is. Their second to last speaker is getting ready to come up here and deliver the second to last. Oh! And the winner is Alan Winson. He is on fire. He's lighting it up. Alan Winson, you just won.
Alan, you won. LinkedIn.
That is incredible.
Yeah, I know, right?
All right, everybody, you can just get back to taking your seats. We got two final speakers you're not going to want to miss.
Oh, I have They're actually in the product. They're actually in the process of revamping it. So you have access to it now, but you'll get
So, all right, the speaker that is coming up next. Yeah, she's an award-winning newscaster. Yes, award-winning newscaster, including an Emmy. How many of us have Emmys in this room?
What did you ask?
Well, apparently there's no one. I thought there was one. Oh, there's one over here. Okay. All right. Yeah, right. So, so the way that I got connected with this speaker, and in my opinion, an incredible opportunity to have somebody who is so kind and so generous with their time to come and be a part of MapCon 5 it actually is a story that involves Melissa, my wife, who pushed me to make the phone call and jump in. Because when I first received an email, it was about emceeing this event. I don't know if I do a great job at this, but I enjoyed it. Of all the things I do enjoy this part of it. Thank you. Not that Bofta is an incredible, I'm not supposed to say a name. I guess I'm not that good. Okay. Anyway.
What's going on? Nobody else says either.
No. Yeah, so Melissa pushed me to make that phone call. We had a great conversation. I think we talked for like 40-some minutes on the phone.
And both of us started like we only have 10 minutes.
Yeah, we were like, because that's right, I was going to get the mail at the time, so I didn't have a lot of time.
That's a joke thing.
Yeah, so we didn't have time, but we did it, and by the end, she was like, hey, I'm really interested in coming, I'll get back to you. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure she'll have some other awesome Emmy kind of winning person thing to do than come to Atlantic City and hang out with some of the most, and this is not just me saying that, but some of the most friendliest people, at least according to the Holiday Inn in Swedesboro, South Swedesboro, the most friendliest people that we bring to hotels is these podcasters yourselves. Give yourselves a hand there for being the friendliest and the most accommodating. Anyway, give it up for Bofta Yimam.
Thank you so much.
All right, how's everyone feeling? We're rounding out the day. How are you feeling? All right? I can't hear you. How are you feeling? Come on. I said, how are you feeling? Oh my goodness. All right, repeat after me. I am empowered.
I am empowered.
I am encouraged.
I am encouraged.
I am elevated.
I am elevated.
Who feels that way? Raise your hand after this conference. Yeah. Fantastic speakers. I know I've enjoyed a lot, learning a lot, and not just about the podcasting world, but also about business and about relationships and networking, as we all know, which are so important and really part of podcasting. So I appreciate you staying here as we go through my session. 20 minutes, the clock is going for me, so I'm going to go through this. We're going to be diving in on mastering the interview with powerful techniques and storytelling tips to help you stand out from the crowd, right? We want to stand out. We know that there's a lot of people. Sometimes there's a lot even in our niche. Even if it's a great niche, there's a lot of people. So how do we stand out? Interviewing and really extracting great moments from people. I call them golden nuggets. But really extracting those golden nuggets out of your interviewee subjects is really powerful for your listeners. I have interviewed thousands of people over the years. I've worked, as he mentioned, for different affiliates. Right now I'm a speaker, coach, and also I freelance for CBS and other outlets as a DC national correspondent out of the DC, Maryland area. So I do a lot of interviewing, a lot of running around. It's really fun, actually. And we're gonna have some fun too. When you see Shadow, my poodle, on the screen, that means it is Q&A time. I'm hoping to get to that at the end. Isn't it cute? All right, so how many takeaways do you want with my session? Just throw out a number, an aha, a breakthrough, an action step. Throw out a number here.
3.
3, 4, 3. Okay, write it down. Whatever you want, write it down. An aha, we know what that is, thanks Oprah. A breakthrough is a breakthrough. And an action step, I want one thing you can actually implement from what I'm talking about. I know you've learned a lot today, but we really want to implement. That's the magic. So why is it that 2 different podcast hosts can interview the same person and only one knocks it out of the park? I don't know why the screen is like that, but only one knocks it out of the park. Why is that? Anyone want to guess? Anyone? Style, different questions, yes, true. Connection.
They listen. Better listening.
Personality. When you're excited and offer smart questions, I believe it can help immediately boost your interviewees' engagement levels. But many podcast hosts fail to do both consistently. Smart questions and remain excited. I know that sometimes you have a guest and you're super pumped because they're that guest that you had to really maybe work or do a few calls or messaging to get them. But what about the person who said yes immediately and doesn't have that following? Are you treating them the same? Are you just as excited for them to be on your podcast? Let's be honest with ourselves. A New York Times columnist once said, exhaustive research is the basic building block of a successful interview. I know that you guys aren't interviewing here, maybe the same people that this columnist was, but it's a good point. Really doing the research, whether it's the person who has the massive following and you're so excited they're coming on, to the person who's just getting started and launching their business and wants a little bit of extra visibility. So nail the 4 basics. Again, it's kind of getting cut off here, but you guys will work with me. But don't be basic is what I put here, right? So nail the basics I'm about to tell you, but don't be basic like this guy. Raw. Research, audience, rapport, ask. Research. Of course, you want to familiarize yourself, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And you guys have been hearing about that through this conference, but researching the interviewee as much as possible. Audience, know what's going to be of most interest to your audience. Many of you are in business, you're doing coaching, you have a product, right? You know your audience, you know what they want. Are you giving it to them? Or are you giving what you think they want to hear? Rapport, establish a relationship with the interviewee and getting them comfortable. This is huge. And then the ask. Leverage questions that are relevant to them. To them. We miss that a lot. And elicit them to open up by asking those relevant questions. So raw, research, audience, rapport, ask. Can I ask you guys to do me a favor? Raise your hand if you will do me a favor. Okay, so I know we've got fewer people in this room, on this side of the room, but when I say, can I get a rah-rah, that means this side says research, audience, and this side says rapport, ask. Follow? Can I get a rah-rah?
Research, audience, rapport, ask.
Okay, you guys are kind of slow on this side. Let's do it again, right here. Can I get a rah-rah?
Research, audience, rapport, ask.
Thank you, Emily, in the back for me. All right, okay? So research, familiarize yourself with the interviewee as much as possible, okay? Go beyond the basics. They're going to give you a speaker bio, maybe. Okay, cool. That's great. Thanks. Appreciate it. Of course, you want to Google. Look at their blogs. We just heard from Karen about blogging. Facebook live streams. Have they recently been on a Facebook live stream? Wouldn't it be great if you caught a moment in that Facebook live stream? Maybe you couldn't watch all 45 minutes, but you could watch some of it, and you could refer to that inside of the interview that you are now doing. Check out previous interviews, especially if there's a transcript. Maybe something was overlooked or dismissed by that other podcast host. Sometimes what you might think is really relevant to your audience may not be relevant to their audience. So can you go back and just take the time, not just for the big dogs coming on your podcast, but for others too, and see if maybe they've spoken somewhere. Organizations, What organizations are they a part of? What do they care about? We heard a lot about philanthropy today. So we know that people in this room tend to care. I think a lot of your listeners probably do too. So maybe your potential guest or your interviewer that you just booked, the interviewee, excuse me, is really passionate about organizations. Wouldn't it be great if you could refer to that? You could extract something, a whole different angle within the interview about that topic that no one else has done. Why do you care about animal shelters? Why do you care about going to Africa every year? Why? We like to know the whys, right? And then speaking engagements. Sometimes speaking engagements are posted, if you're like me, all over Facebook when I speak or different places. So it's kind of cool to refer to, hey, I noticed that you were speaking there. What's that about? Why were you don't even have a podcast, why were you at MapCon? And I can make light of it but have fun with it. So we just heard about LinkedIn, and I was so happy that Karen brought that up because LinkedIn is so incredibly powerful. I always think it's great to look at how does somebody describe themselves in their own words. When you check out somebody's LinkedIn profile, that's them saying something like, I'm a business guru. I'm the expert of this and this. So why did you pick those words? What does that mean to you when you call yourself a podcast guru? Right? So you can always start with that. This is somebody telling you how they see themselves. And so I think it's powerful to look at, like I put here an example. You call yourself a, let's say, business guru, and your LinkedIn headline, what does that mean to you? How did you come up with that? Maybe they have a clever or catchy name. Same thing if they have like a cool podcast name that they have. What made you come up with that? We know that you can easily ask that. And what else I like about LinkedIn is because you can see their history. So, oh cool, now you're the business guru, but I noticed 15 years ago you were in trucking. And you can look at that piece. It's small, right? But it takes you 5 minutes. It doesn't always have to be exhaustive if you can find great nuggets like that. What if it was cool if you could actually find something that not everyone has asked? You want your interview to stand out. So look for something that catches your attention as well. Do they write articles on LinkedIn? What kind? Do they have a ton of followers? All of those things that you can check out and plug into your own podcast. Of course, we know social media, and I think that when I was on Joe's podcast, you probably saw a photo, and I think that you did refer to, I thought you were over here traveling, and you referred that you had actually at least checked out what I'd been up to lately before I came on his podcast. So that makes your guest feel pretty good that at least you did that. And one thing that if you're interviewing someone, again, if you know a little bit about their background, you can refer and say something like, is traveling a new priority? After I know you've been in the grind for so many different years, has traveling just become this new priority for you? Why is that? So digging a little bit deeper, not just saying, I noticed you went to Ireland, why Ireland? Oh, wow, I see you're with your whole family. Just asking a little bit more. What's that like to go from living on a couch to now having a personal assistant who books your travel to exotic places? Much better than just saying, you went to Ireland, right? Family photo, of course you could talk about family life balance. Maybe that's connected to what they do. So looking at their page, but looking at it with questions in mind. So again, doesn't have to be exhaustive, doesn't take you 10 hours, but you can do it. Anything that provides you with context, what you're looking for is who this person really is. And that's what your audience is going to appreciate as well. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. What else? Like I said, don't hesitate to give context showing your research inside the interview. What do I mean by that? All the things that I was saying. You could say, I noticed, or that was so cool that I saw this, or hey, I checked out your LinkedIn profile. I see that you've been active on it a ton in the past week, promoting this new course. What's that about? So that's how you can insert it, okay? I'm not going to go deep into this because you went through it today, but knowing your audience, I think we all know the avatar, marketing to your audience, the niche. You talked about that. Rapport, establishing a relationship with the interviewee, right? How do we establish rapport? So that's small talk. I would say do not start the interview immediately. You want to just talk to them. Just give them a second. I know that you've blocked out 45 minutes for your actual podcast maybe, or 30 minutes or an hour. I would tack on an extra 20 minutes, extra 25 minutes, just to at least ease into it. So for your scheduling, you know that it's probably going to be longer by the time they get situated. You test the audio. Okay, how you doing? You cool? Do you need to get any water? How's your day going? Oh man, it's been a hectic day. It's been stressful. Cool, totally get it. We can just take a second. If you want, you need to get some water, you know, and just giving them that time, which, yes, I understand takes time, but it's going to make for a better interview. You're actually showing that you care, and hopefully you do. You do care about them. I would also mention that it's great to pay attention to details. And what I mean by paying attention to details, I mean things like the wall art in the background. Oh, cool poster you have back there. Where'd you get that? Oh, I was just in Hawaii. Just paying attention to the actual scenario. And of course, with that being said, I recommend, I know that some people here, there's exceptions, you do your podcasts in bars and different things. So of course, this is all, you know, exceptions to be made to anything I'm saying here, depending on the nature of your podcast. But I do recommend Zoom and doing the podcast actually visually, even if it's just an audio-only podcast. So you can see their reaction, you can see their office, you can see where they are. Maybe they're traveling when you're actually doing the podcast, and you talk about, you know, hey, where are you right now? Pretty cool. Maybe their kids are popping in the room I put here. We saw that happen in the news story, right? So I think it's kind of cool just to actually point out something when you are building that rapport, that moment. Reassure them, it's just a conversation. And that's what I say when I do interviews with people. I say, hey, they're like, oh, I've never been on TV before. I get it, it's just a conversation. You know, you actually just look at me the whole time, don't worry about the camera. We're just having a conversation. And of course, with Zoom, they do need to look at the camera, so it's a little bit different, right? But just say, it's a conversation. Double check the pronunciation of their name, always. You know, if it makes them feel like, okay, you know, just double check it before you go on your podcast. And you can do that again during the building rapport stage or before, right? Depends. Request they turn off cell phones. I would even suggest you go a step further and actually ask them to put their cell phone out of the room, unless they're expecting an emergency call, right? Because it's distracting, the buzzer goes off, and we all just naturally just look toward the phone. And it could interrupt a really great moment. So try your best to remember that, to definitely put the cell phone in another room. Be excited, express gratitude, thank them, of course, for coming on. Listen to your guest, okay, during that rapport phase and during the podcast. Be quiet, let them talk, they came on. Don't, you know, interrupting them all the time. I'm a guest on quite a few podcasts, and I also know what it's like to listen to a podcast and think, oh, just let them talk. Let them talk. You're interrupting like really great stuff sometimes. So, yes, energy always matters, even during the rapport. How you come on at the very beginning of the building rapport matters for your entire podcast. So if you're coming on and you've had a bad morning or whatever it might be, you have to really put that to the side because that person can read that. So your energy really matters in that building rapport stage and during the podcast. So quick tips to improve your energy: schedule interviews at your peak energy times. Okay, so for many people that might be the morning, and for many of you, you're like, why, I'm everything all the time. Well, there's probably a moment where you have better energy than later in the day. I think mornings work for a lot of people pretty well, maybe like 11 noon. Get good sleep. If your body's exhausted, like mine is a little bit today, don't be surprised if it shows up in your voice. So my voice is a little bit tighter today, and I can feel it. Even though I drank hot water and I know I was speaking, I can feel it. So just pay attention that if your body is tired, it will show in your voice because it's a toolbox, right? So pay attention to that. What else? If you're struggling to pay attention, I do this anyway. Write down a quick word or two during the interview as your internal cue. So let's say Karen said something fantastic about LinkedIn, right? And I'm interviewing her. And I know she's in a momentum. I don't want to interrupt her. I'll just make a quick note, like, you know, Girl Scout or CEO. Just a quick one-word note, not interrupting her, but something that I really want to touch back on as soon as she kind of goes through that momentum, because you don't want to interrupt this great story that she might be telling. So just 1 word or 2 words, you can jot it down. Do not type it. That's distracting, right? So no typing during the podcast. I think you guys know that. But that happened to me. I was a guest once. It was a new podcast host who was a friend. I love him. And I told him after, I said, look, as your friend and as a coach, I'm going to tell you, don't type because you missed moments when I was telling you something very transparent. And you missed a moment because you were so busy trying to transcribe and get like 40 things done at the same time. I was telling him that I went through teenage depression, and I was opening up and telling him, and he went right to the scripted question after. And I thought, ooh, that was a missed moment. And we just kept going, but I told him as a friend after, So don't type, just pay attention, just listen. You might miss some golden moments. And then leverage those notes to ask strong follow-up questions. So, like I said, if I wrote Girl Scout, because we heard that great story, I might say something like, what's your connection like with her today? Or, just moving, wow, what else? And, just asking a strong follow-up to that. So you don't have to write out the whole question while they're talking. You can put just that internal cue. It'll work, trust me. Let your personality shine. Sounds so cliche, but it's so true. Be yourself and have fun. And then the number 4 for ask out of our rah-rah. Can I get a rah-rah? Rah-rah. Research audience. Okay, can I get a rah-rah?
Research audience.
Oh, man. Joe, my man, Joe. Where were you, Joe? Just have my back. All right, just joking. Okay, so number 4, ask. Leverage questions that are relevant to them and that elicit them to open up. I'm just joking, Joe. All right, so create a short list of open-ended questions to help you get warmed up. If you are a podcaster who's just starting out, I recommend this. Only because you can get off track very quickly, and then it can be hard to come back on. So if you're seasoned, I'll tell you something in a moment. But if you are a beginner podcaster, I would recommend you just have like 4, 5, 6 questions. How, what, whens, whys, those kinds of questions that actually allow someone to talk versus the yes, no, do you, right? Do you go to the gym? Do you, that's a yes, no. We want how, what, when, why, and good follow-ups. Are you more seasoned? Are you a more seasoned podcaster? Then I would not say to do the questions. And again, depending on the nature of your podcast. So you have to consider, of course, your style. I would consider writing several bullet points, topics, themes that you just wanted to hit on. So I might have noticed that the Girl Scout CEO was on her podcast, so then I might say that that's maybe a topic or a theme about young girls growing up these days, and maybe something I wanted to go into, whether it's mental health, maybe it's getting outdoors, whatever it might be. I might write down that that was the topic or the theme, but the Girl Scout CEO was part of that. And so we can connect them. But it's more of a theme than a scripted question. Does that make sense? Everyone get it? Okay. Don't stay married to your questions. Be curious and bold to ask for more details. That also goes again to, don't be afraid to just say, what do you mean by that? Because I don't know what that means. Maybe I'm not very smart. I don't know. And so it's okay. Don't be afraid to, what you think looks stupid is that your audience is going to be like, thank you for asking that because I don't even know. And they were about to tune out because it's jargon and they don't know what it means. So don't be afraid of looking like you don't know. You're not supposed to have all the answers. Not to everything in the world. So it's okay to ask for clarity. But a lot of times on podcasts, you let the expert keep going, and guess what? You're losing your audience because you haven't taken that moment to just, hey, hold up for a second. Can I just ask you to go back to that, what was that word you used? Oh, okay, cool, because I didn't know what that was, and I got a little lost there. And they'll say, oh, it's this, and then you might end up in a better conversation and a better angle because of it, because you were willing to ask what your audience is actually asking you to do. Engaging questions, just an example, a few examples. I love that you're a fan of NAPCON. Tell me more about how that came about. You could say, I've never done that. What was that like? So you're engaged and you're excited. What's that like to go to Ireland for 3 weeks with your family? That sounds awesome. Many of our listeners are going through the same thing right now. What would be the first step you would advise in getting started? Maybe in launching a podcast, right? So just mentioning your listeners too sometimes. Don't forget to bring it back to the listeners. and say things like, that's what, you know what, I was just asked that by a client that I work with. And she listens to this podcast all the time. I know she wants to know this answer. You know that, not that client is gonna feel good, the listener's gonna feel good. Like you're actually paying attention. So for those in business and podcasting, I say this because some people are looking to get their service, their product, their coaching out there in conjunction with the podcast. So how can we further communicate the transformational process of using our product and service? How can we do that in a very natural and organic way in the podcast? Storytelling secrets. Clients hold stories. Building authority and trust in your podcast through the way that you communicate. When in doubt, 3 C's. Conflict, characters, and curiosity. What do I mean by that? Conflict. Mentioning something that maybe the client has gone through. What's a conflict? Anyone? What's a conflict? Karen, what's a conflict? Because you were just up here.
Oh, maybe it's something that's a little controversial, that you don't maybe even agree with what they say, right? So you're going to say, well, I'm not really sure what context you're talking about it in.
So your LinkedIn clients who come to you, I'm assuming that they're like, I'm lost on LinkedIn, I'm trying to get leads on LinkedIn. So is that the conflict, or they're dealing with no revenue? What's the conflict?
Got it. Yeah, they want to know why are they spending time there? They're there because they want more business, right? So that's the bottom line, but there's more conflict. The deeper I can dive into what that conflict is, the better chance I'm going to be able to help them. Because if I say, what do you want? They're going to say more money.
Right.
That doesn't help anybody. We all want more money, right? So what's the conflict? I'm not getting enough leads. I'm spending too much time. I'm paying too much for this.
Okay,
I'm not
good.
seeing the results.
So then we take it to the character. A character would be the Jane, the Mary, the Samantha, whoever was that, hey, that's a potential prospect in your mind, right? And then the curiosity is, the one thing that I told her? And how you can implement this in the podcast, you may be wondering, is, well, somebody's probably talking, your actual person you're interviewing is talking about something maybe that they went through. Well, guess what? Yeah, I had a client, or I was on the phone the other day with Jane. She was telling me the same thing about LinkedIn marketing and how she was so frustrated with it. The one thing I told her, it's okay to talk about what you do on your podcast. People are coming to you as the expert too. And now there will be some people who say, well, it's not about me, it's about the interviewee. It is the podcasting world. They're coming to you because they like you too. They like your voice and they trust who you're bringing on. So yes, it's okay to mention in a natural, organic way, not overdone, right? But just here and there, like, yeah, I heard that the other day too. People just frustrated. Or did you see that Gary Vee was talking about LinkedIn? And you know what he said about it? My client said the same thing, showed her the way. And then you can say the one thing I told her. And then guess what your interviewee is going to say? Yeah, that's exactly what I do too. So there are ways you can do it very naturally and organically, but don't think you can't talk about yourself on your own podcast. Pay attention to what clients tell you, so the pains, desires, and frustrations. The better you know the PDF, pains, desires, and frustrations, the better you can speak to it very organically, just like Karen did, and just say, yeah, they're frustrated that they don't get any leads, and this and this and that, and this and this and that. If you don't know their pains and their desires and frustrations, and you're trying to speak to your ideal audience who's listening to the podcast, it's going to be a lot harder. So you've got to know your client in order to speak to your client, because you want to communicate in the same way, in the same words, right? So start tracking client stories. Before and during, you can document it during the initial conversation. Maybe it happened at a conference. Yes, you can document it when you get back to your hotel room. Sales calls. You can document what are the pains they're telling you. So when you're on your podcast and you're talking about that subject matter, you can really organically speak to it. It's not science here. It's very simple. Somebody's going through a pain and you're solving the problem. Now you're just speaking about it in the same way that they communicated to you. Does that make sense? Follow my service providers out here and product folks. Several months in, what major milestones were achieved, what transformation took place, and you can do all that again just through documenting, and then you can mention it. So in Karen's case, she might say, well, by the time we worked together, the transformation was not only had they gotten more visible, they were now getting speaking engagements. Well, I had one client go to London all the way through LinkedIn. That happened to me. So, no, really, it happened to me. So why couldn't it happen to somebody else? And it was all through LinkedIn. So I'm with Karen on that. I believe in LinkedIn and the power. So guess what? You're talking about transformation in a very organic way. This person went from no profile to having this huge transformation, and also in mindset, because now they just believed they could do anything, and they were so visible. It was awesome. So tracking client stories help you understand, speak, and deliver stories in the same language your prospects communicate in. So you're going to sprinkle in mini client stories, these mini client stories, very tiny little ones you can sprinkle throughout to help build know, like, and trust with your audience. Everyone agrees? Okay. So before, during, after, and I'm running out of time here. So before, during, and after, you can talk about what they were going through before, what they're going through during, and then after, all in a little mini story. Feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. I've had many clients who felt that same way before, frustrated on LinkedIn, not sure how to navigate it, and here's what they found. If they did this every day, they would. Boom, 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 boom. Very simple. It doesn't have to be a long-winded story every time you're telling a story. Real quick, I'm going to go through this. Providing tactical advice, action step that an ideal client can do. So you can say, when your interviewee says something, you can say, you know what? That's why we do the first step in our member process. And the first step is to analyze line by line their budget, whatever service you provide. So giving somebody insight into the first step in your process. Again, a mini client story. Inspiring real-life examples. The last client who signed up was focused on growing his podcast so he could build a fan base. I made this up. And yes, we did that. What he didn't expect, he would gain incredible fulfillment and write a step-by-step book on how others could do it too. And then guess what? Your interviewee is going to say, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And maybe he'll say something else. I don't know. Break down complex concepts. Show your authority here, right? People are coming to your podcast. You're the expert in something, or you've got passion for something. So leverage that, like show that to people. Are you following in the news and in the world what's going on? Whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's in business, whether it's, hey, podcasting trends, whether it's the SEC, while you're fighting for something, take a stance. Take a stance on whatever it is. Or let people know that you're actually paying attention to it, and let your audience know why you care about that. But that's revealing your expertise and your authority as you do that. And yes, you can share your story and your transformational moments too. I help people craft and syndicate their compelling signature stories for the stage and online. And what we talk about is a very simple way sometimes you can do this. A very quick way is, here's what happened to me. So you're in your gut, you're showing your vulnerability. We heard about transparency today. So here's what happened to me. Here's what I learned from it. And here's what I want you to know. Very quick way of sharing your own personal story and a transformational moment, because transformational moments are the moments where we actually connect with people. How many takeaways? I know I had to zoom through this and I still went over time, but how many takeaways did you guys get?
Oh, way more than 3. Yeah.
Way more than 3. I love you, Karen. I love you. Okay, anyone else? How many takeaways? 2. Cool. Take that. Take that from our Super Joe. I mean, if I got 1 from Super Joe. Really? Anyone else want to share?
10.
10?
11.
Ooh, we're doing good. 10? Good. Okay. So if you would like to stay connected, the easiest way to do so is to text Story 2019 to 555-888. There's my hair in the image. You will receive a prompt and you'll enter your email. I'll be sending you my 14 strategic ways to land speaking engagements. A quick freebie for you guys, because I believe that speaking is one of the best ways for you to actually not only have high impact and visibility, but also for you just to share your bigger message. There's no reason why you can't be in front of the room. And if you've got a podcast, what better way to also promote what you're doing and the impact that you're trying to have? So you'll get that freebie. And also, if you would like it, I'm happy to send you this slideshow, but you just email me and say, slide. And then I will just send it back, okay? So, because I actually didn't think to do that until I was hearing other folks do it, and I thought, oh, I should just give away my slides too. So I'm happy to do that for you guys. Cool with that?
Yeah.
Good with that? Giving away slides? Great. If you're looking for a new guest on your podcast, I do that. I do anything with speaking and influencing. So I have a course. I help people craft their story. So I actually help you edit. I go through the process of crafting your story for the stage, for online. How can you actually be visible with your story and your message and your expertise syndicated and connected together? Because I want you to have a deep impact, because you guys are doing good stuff, powerful. I see so many nonprofits in here and hearing about it all day, it's inspiring even for me. So if you would like a new guest, if you would like any assistance with speaking and influencing and how to do it so you capture your audience, let me know. You connect with me with Story 2019 to 555-888. Quick Q&A, I'll take 2 questions. No? Joe, do I have time for 2 questions? I already said it, I know.
So you get a guest, goes on and on and on, and they're going somewhere.
Yeah,
They're not compelling.
they're not gonna.
They're not compelling.
Yeah.
And you help them in that you're in the middle of the interview. I mean, I've chucked a few interviews.
Yeah.
I couldn't
So
use it.
I think once you sense it going down that path,
Mhm.
you have to step in your leadership there and say, hey, you know what, you just said something, I'm curious to know. That's a softener, but to divert it to where you want it to go.
Yeah.
But you gotta step into a leadership to also know, you can hear for sometimes usually a gap in someone's voice, and we did talk a lot about voice today. You can hear a gap sometimes when they take a pause. You know, I'm glad you said that. No, I want to talk more about that. And also you want to make sure that you have set up a stage, in essence, of letting them know why they're really what is it that they're coming on the podcast to discuss. Because sometimes it's not very clear, just come on, and you're like, they're going to come on and steal your show. Literally. Yeah, so just something to keep in mind. How are you setting them up? Here's why I'm really interested in having you on. I thought this was fascinating. I saw your article here. Would you like to come on the show, or, you know, whatever it might be. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? But look for the gap when you are stuck in those moments. Look for the gap and be like, oh, hold on one second. I want to interrupt you there because I want to make sure that we stay on track with so many listeners and what they're really looking for from this interview. And I know they're really interested in how you started your business.
Do you think it's a little harder when you're not in front of them?
Correct, which is why I say Zoom to me or in person would be the best way to go. And also the benefit of doing Zoom is you can actually read, we were talking about this yesterday with some folks, but you can read their facial expressions and you can say, oh, I just saw you cringe a little bit. So what made you cringe when I said boom, boom, boom? So you can actually have a better interview because you can play off of also what they're doing with their emotions. I know I said 2 questions. Anyone else? I know it's time for me to.
Well,
Yes.
if nobody's going to jump in,
Go ahead.
that it sort of tags on to what you're saying, because what I find is a lot of my people that I interview are not that tech savvy. So when you say Google Hangouts or Zoom, they're like, you know, they're just more comfortable on the phone. They don't care that I'm calling them through. So it's annoying.
You could take the extra time to maybe do a test run
Yeah.
with them, if that's really.
I know, they're
important to you.
seriously.
To do it, you could do a test run, maybe. I would still say it's worth doing testing
Yeah.
for. And it's worth it. And look, you can always find other guests who are.
I know.
I would say,
I
well,
do
look,
it.
this is the way I do it, it's part of my policy.
Yeah.
It gives you a chance to get them on headphones and a
Yeah.
microphone too,
Yeah.
which
No, I always do a
Can't kill it
test.
otherwise.
I'll do it like
Yeah.
a week before, just to make sure everything sounds good and they know what the hell they're doing.
I mean, I've had
Yeah.
coaching clients who also were uncomfortable with Zoom, and I had to literally walk them through. I actually created a little mini video for folks in my course, and I said, this is how you do Zoom.
Okay.
So I'm all about, like, can I teach it once and then
Yeah.
send it to that person, to the person. So I would recommend that. I know, Super Joe, time's up already. All right, we got our 2 questions in. Thank you so much.
You did wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bofta Yimam, everybody, give it up. All right, so we have one last speaker, and then I'm just going to wrap it up as quick as I can, go through like my 6, 7 slides. The